So before I introduce our guest of honor today, I just want to go over a couple of quick ground rules. For those of you who are joining us online, if you would like to ask a question, but you'd like to protect your privacy and not show up because we are recording this, you can do so by using the chat. So please write your questions in the chat because we're going to have a nice long Q&A time frame. But please keep your questions short and sweet because it can easily become unwieldy if you go on for too long. Those of you who are actually attending today, if you'd like to ask a question, you can come up to the mic in real time and ask it. You could be on camera if you like as well, or we've got some pads lying around where you can write your question and bring it to me so I can ask our speaker. So without further ado, our wonderful guest of honor today is Tammi Spring, and it's a great pleasure to have you, Tammi.
Thank you.
Tammi is a writer, photographer, intuitive. She died in 2013 while going through cancer treatment. While she was on the other side, she became aware that this was not the first time that she'd actually died. She talked to her counsel about multiple exit points. And so we definitely want to learn about exit points. Those are fascinating. And Tammi didn't connect with her relatives and friends while she was on the other side, but she returned to the epicenter of universal knowledge and our soul's love energy. And she learned a great deal about timelines, metaphysical space, and the interconnectedness of energy that is creation itself. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Tammi. Welcome, and take it away.
Thank you, Angie. Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be here to see all of you in the Northern Virginia area, everyone who's online. I was actually a DC, Virginia resident when I had my near-death experience in 2013. I live in Colorado now, and so it's a nice little homecoming to be able to talk about the places and the environment and understanding the energy of a community when explaining what's going on and why things happened. So what I wanted to talk with you all about today, and if this is what you're interested in, we'll get more into the Q&A and things like that. But this idea of making a choice to come back and experiencing miracles, and just bringing that love and that full infinite energy experience back into this human life again. And I'm sure a lot of you have heard many near-death experiencers talk about their experience, and especially if you've been to the conferences. What I find interesting is that a lot of us spend a lot of time explaining how we died and why we died. And I think it's fascinating. Like even though we know as humans our bodies are going to fail us and give up, we're still really shocked that it happens. Like, wow, that happened. How did that happen? As if understanding can prevent it from happening again. And we can't. We really have no predictions around what's going to happen with our bodies and the timelines and things like that. But it does provide context and background to get us to the point of dying. And I want to give you a little bit of that just so you have some context, and then more on what it was like to be home, what it was like to make these decisions and come back into this human experience again. And just for context, at the time, I was living in Loudoun County, out in Ashburn, far out into the suburbs. My job was in DC, 2 blocks from the White House, and I had a job where I was running an open innovation program for the current presidential administration in 2013. And I had 2 young children. I was going through a divorce, and I felt like I was getting a new lease on life, this amazing career. My kids were doing really well, and I was fit. And I had just reunited with the love of my life, and I was just this is so great. And then everything just went sideways, and out of nowhere, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I'd been so healthy. There was no history of it in my family or anything like that, but it just put a stop to my life, right? I had to just think, what am I doing here? And I decided going into these treatments, it really wasn't aligned with how I treated my body to put poisons in it and things like that. But I really felt like I should make the best effort I could to stick around for my young children, to be in a situation where I could live the longest life possible. And in my 5th round of chemo, I went home, and for the week after, I felt like I was popping out of my body. If anybody's ever had that experience where you feel like your body's just kind of there and the spirit of it's popping out, and I was floating above myself. I was looking down at myself. I was only able to move as much as I could to maybe get a glass of water to kind of readjust my comfort levels, just stare out the skylight in the roof of my home. And I thought, this is okay. I have told everyone I love that I love them. I have dotted my I's and crossed my T's about what I need to do in my life. I wasn't going to make it through this. And I felt like I'd lived a complete, really good life. And it was okay if I was ready to go. Laying there, and then I thought, maybe I should go see a doctor just in case there's something interesting, easy that they could do. And I called a friend that I could trust. And if any of you have had near-death experiences where you've had some time or you've been with someone who's dying, I think the big thing about that was I realized, like, I didn't know who I could trust to come in and be with me, who would be safe for me to just be with, and that they weren't going to try to talk me out of dying or diminish my experience and things like that. And it's a really sacred space full of love to be dying, but I didn't want to die alone. And I really thought maybe I should go. So my friend and I hopped in her car. We're driving on Interstate 66. And as soon as we were having a conversation like we are right now, and we passed right inside the Beltway, and she said in the middle of a sentence, I just started shaking like I was having a seizure, and I just went right over, fell over in her car. And she was having a really tough time. But for me, this was the most phenomenal part of the thing. I popped right out of my body and I went home, and I was like, oh, I'm free of all the pain. I'm free of all this, like, being squeezed into the body. I was totally and immediately infused with this feeling of infinite love and the energy that just coursed through my entire body. It's indescribable, but we always keep trying to describe it. I think in saying just, love, 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 but we do want to explain how much love there is outside of this body when we go home. We call it our soul's home or heaven or something like that. And I felt amazing, and I was renewed with energy. And it was just the most blissful, incredible experience. And I'm going to share a little bit of my artwork with you that I use to illustrate these stories. So I might pop this up so that you can see this. When I was describing what was happening in this first part of my near-death experience, all of these tiny light bubbles, the colors, the flow of things, it wasn't in a corporal body, it wasn't in physical space. The energy had form that would change. And I was infused with what felt like these downloads of infinite knowledge, of understanding of all time and space and the earth. And I would liken it to these little bubbles. Like, you could just look at a bubble and then look closer at the bubble, and the bubble was infinite. And every time I would pay attention to something, that knowledge and that experience would be infused back into my being. And so for me, the exciting part of this was in my life, I was not a person who had done science and math and things like that, but I was always interested, and I failed those classes in school. But when I got home, I was able to understand quantum. I was able to understand geometric patterns in mathematics in ways that showed me that love was the energy that it creates all of us, that flows through us. It's what powers us. And that the math and the science of things is what puts all of those parts together and builds everything together. So I really had a fantastic experience. And as Angie said, I didn't go through a tunnel and see my family. I was just like popped right back into central headquarters. And these people were my family, my guides, my community from the beginning of time. it was more than a familial relationship. It was a complete soul connection with all of these people, and this understanding that at the time I popped back into headquarters, my being was also in multiple other places and multiple other dimensions, and that we are multi-dimensional infinite beings. And so the human experience is just one of the things that we're doing. And it's a significant one. So getting this knowledge made me feel very at peace. It made me feel like I was perfectly fine, having let go of my human life. Everything there was going to be okay. The sense of everything is going to be okay, like always, no matter what happens, everything is going to be okay. And so I was very content staying there. And there was a conversation that happened, and so I said, go back if you want. You've gone back before. And immediately I had this life review of this life, where I had been in a surgery when I was a toddler, and I popped out and I went to my grandparents and hung out with them. And then later when I was a teenager and I had a traumatic experience, and I popped out of my body and went home then. And again, all of these other type of little miracles that happened, like when I was in a car accident after college, and the person I was driving with, our car flipped over multiple times. We were held as if we were in a bubble. And it showed me all these times, like you could have exited here, here, and here, but you popped out of the body, you came home, and you said, oh no, I'll go back. I can do it. Because I got refueled. Like I don't feel that heaviness and the weight of the world on my shoulders after being home at Soul's Home. So I felt like I was refueled to go back, or that I had the capacity to do this again. And they said, is there anything that you want to go back for? And I said, yes, I wanted to go back and continue with the commitment that I had to my daughters, to take them through life, to be a companion with them through life and help them as much as I could. And I had the unfortunate experience that had started about 10 years before, of being in a domestic violence situation with the person I was married to. And I didn't know at the time that I was in that situation. That had just been a new reality that came up in 2012. And remember, I died in 2013. So this is kind of a new thing of my understanding of this, and what love was, and what companionship and relationships were, and things. And I'd gotten a taste of what it was like to experience a really healthy, beautiful, blessed, like love relationship with someone else. And I thought, yeah, I want to go back and experience that human love that is really connected and beautiful and heart-centered, and not manipulative or addictive or motivated by power plays or any of those things. And so they said, okay, well, if you go back, we're going to ask you to do one thing. And I said, okay, what is it? And they said, tell the stories. And that sounds like such a simple thing, right? To say, tell the stories. I had been a storyteller and a writer and a creative person my whole life, but that was not allowed in my family because there were family secrets of abuse and addictions and things like that. And the greatest fear of the family was that somebody's going to talk, and you were not to talk. If you were going to talk, you were going to be cut out. And I said, all right, you know what? I feel so filled up with love, so filled up with energy of my own being and my abilities. I can do it. I can go back. And I've been working on a memoir for years. But one of the things that they didn't say was, you have to start a podcast or write a best-selling book. They just said, tell the stories. And it made me think about how important it is for all of us in our day-to-day lives. Like how often are we authentic? How often am I telling, the truth of who I am, to not just get along with people, but to be our true selves. And for me, that this was like a really big challenge, looking at the way women's lives are in our society and our community. Like, how often do we get to be fully into our authenticity? Do we even know what we like? I mean, I didn't know what I liked at the time. My whole life was revolved around, doing what I needed to do for work, or pleasing my spouse, or taking care of the kids. I was given a few hours every week to myself. I didn't know what to do, because I didn't know what I liked. I knew what I should like book club or drinking wine or something like that. And that really wasn't my thing. So I knew that being able to come back would be this idea that I could redo my life in a way, that was different than the way I'd done it before. And that was a little bit scary, especially since the guides told me we're not fixing anything. You're still going to go back into that broken body. You're still going to go back into the situations that you're in. And you just need to go live authentically, and you need to trust your intuition. Everything you need will come. Trust that everything you need will come. And this image I'm sharing with you now is an image of all of the trauma on my body, that I was going back into. Broken bones, cancer impact on my organs, traumatic brain injury, like all of these things. And knowing that I was going back into that I was still going to have some pain, that I was still going to be dealing with a dangerous ex-spouse and the police, that I was going to be single parenting, that I was going to have to work, all of that kind of layered up. And this, to see this and go, okay, I'm still willing to come back and do that. This is this moment of contemplation here. I painted this. I'm not a painter, but I painted this idea. You can see here, there's a shape of a woman. And then here is what I would say is the gold energy being of my soul self, and contemplating each other about, going back. There's a moment of choice and doing this. And this pivotal time that feels like it's infinite. It's, I had all the time in the world to decide, but it also happens in a flash. And that to me was just such a significant moment of empowerment and excitement, and possibility. So I decided to come back. And for my friend who was driving the car, she had pulled over off of 66 and was on the side of the road, calling an ambulance, deciding, should she keep driving me to the hospital? Should we wait for care to come in? That kind of thing. I slurped right back into my body. Like, it felt like trying to stuff air into the pinhead. It was like, I don't even know how we fit our full souls into our body, but just slurp right back in. And I just popped up and I said, I'm back. And she's like, oh, how, are you all right? I said, yeah, great. She said, should we go to the hospital? I was like, oh, definitely go. And so we did. And and I was back into every amount of pain I had felt. And that still the fuel that I could do anything if I trusted, if I had faith, if I knew from that time where I was home and I could see these infinite timelines, I could see the long view of things, that I could trust every moment of pain would go, and there would be other moments coming. So we went into the hospital. The guides had told me when I came back that they weren't going to fix anything. I still had cancer. But I told my doctors I would not be doing any more treatment, and they agreed. They said, yeah, when you have a near-death experience, you don't have to keep doing treatment, but would you do surgery? And so I did surgery to take out the tumor. And a year later, so that was summer of 2013, the following summer, we had an occasion to travel to celebrate the end of my treatments, to celebrate the start of this new life. And I just want to take a second here and just take a breath, because remembering all of this, like where you all are today in Northern Virginia, I mean, just the pressure of success in that area, the sitting in traffic for 2 to 4 hours a day, It was just not the life that I wanted. And when I came back from the near death experience, I said, okay, I get to create, I get to create this next life. Like, anything is possible. If I believe what I experienced in my near death experience, if I believe what the guides and the angels and the community of other souls have told me, is I come back and I can create whatever life I want. And I started to imagine living in a beautiful place, somewhere where I could be outside, I could touch nature, I would breathe fresh air, that I would wake up every day and say, wow, I live in this beautiful, beautiful place. And that seemed so far removed from where I was sitting in traffic, working long days, managing things at home. And but I set the vision. I started setting the vision for how I wanted to live. You know, I could sleep in. I wouldn't have to be waking up to an alarm all the time. I would be able to, go hug trees, go stand on the top of a mountain, touch fresh water, drink clean water. You know, things that this earth provides. And one of the big reasons for that was because what I could see in my near death experience of the earth was, this is just a miraculous planet given to us with every resource of everything we need. It is a playground of sensory excitement, of things that nourish us, things that delight us, beauty. We need nothing as humans here other than the plants and the air and the water and the community that we have. And it made me so much more aware of like wanting to connect to the world in that way, and not through this lens of productivity or lens of accomplishments, but lens of connection, and seeing everything through love too. Like, do we tell the people that we love them? Do we allow ourselves to love a stranger in a moment where you laugh together at the grocery store over the same joke of something happening, right? Like, all of these little moments that we bypass trying to get to a different place. And I wanted to enjoy more of these moments of delight. I wanted to enjoy more of nature. I wanted to really crack myself open in the body the way that I had been cracked open at home, in feeling that pure infusion of love. And setting that goal for myself also made me less attached to the specific outcome of any one particular thing, right? Like, what happened in July of 2014 was that my ex-spouse, who had previously tried to end my life multiple times, was breaking into my new home, and the police couldn't catch him. So I was told, you need to go to a safe place now. You need to take care of yourself and just basically go into hiding. And while that sounds like a really terrible experience, and I would say, oh, this is bad, you know, judging the experience as bad, that was actually a catalyst that put me on the road to exploring, driving around the country and exploring with my daughters, where did we want to live, and experiencing miracles every single day of that journey, of people's generosity and kindness and guidance, and hearing my own intuition say, I know you plan to go here, but go there. All right, now go this way. And really trusting that, because I remembered that's what I learned in my near-death experience. Trust your intuition. Trust this thing. It might not seem like it makes sense. It might not seem like it's the right thing to do, but if you feel it and you know it better in your body than I did in my mind. And so this idea that we judge things that are good or bad, you know, and it's an absolute, and nothing is absolute. It's this concept of yin yang, right? It's not perfect. It is fluid. It is this, we don't know the outcome from a good or a bad experience. And so while I think everyone I talk to would say, wow, that's horrible, you had to leave your home of 25 years. You had to, leave your job for a while. You had to go on the run. You had to go into hiding. That sounds bad, but what it opened up for us was connections of people and experiences and taking me to a place that was an absolute miracle. And this concept for me that I could let go of the emotional cognitive attachment to a situation and get into the flow of things and to go with the flow of things, and allow something beautiful to come from that. And where I ended up was um, where I ended up with things was in Colorado in the mountains, where, of all things, a family I had known in high school lived nearby, and they had kids the same ages as mine, and they offered to help. And I don't know how old all of you are, but if you're over 30, 40s, 50s like me, you don't imagine that someone you knew when you were a teenager would actually be someone who could help you 25 or 30 years later in one of the most pivotal moments of your life. Like nothing is wasted in these timelines, like these chance meetings or acquaintances we have in time. Like my friends who were there in Colorado, and they said, "Of course, we'll help you." These weren't my best friends. They weren't people I'd even really stayed in touch with, other than a little social media chats here and there. And so being open to that, saying yes, like these to me were absolute miracles. And because of people like this, I was able to transfer my life and move my children to a place where they could walk to school, I could walk to work. And every day was like a vacation, because I would wake up in the morning and look out and say, wow, I live in a beautiful place. I could walk after work up on the trails. And that healed my body. I was in a lot of pain, and still, I mean, even today, I still have a lot of pain in my body from the surgeries, from the radiation and chemo and things like that. And I just needed to be out in nature. And then I started to look for signs, like, how do I know I'm on the right path? I think we all do this in a way, like find a lucky penny. My thing is looking for hearts in nature. And so I started taking pictures, back when I had been going through the treatments, of one picture a day, just to remind me that the world was a beautiful place. And then I started looking for hearts in nature, shapes of hearts in trees or in clouds and things like that. And it's funny, like, you ask for these things, you ask for these little miracles of, like, show me I'm on the right path, and they show up. And I'll be curious in our Q&A if anybody has anything that they experience of going through their daily miracles. Maybe a song comes on the radio or something like that. But I was really excited to see these things come together. And but I didn't stick to what I was told to do. Remember, they said tell the stories, and I got a lot of anxiety about being able to support my kids, to be able to pay legal fees, live, pay off my medical bills, things like that. And so I continued in the industry that I'd been in, and I went and I worked for someone else. But I could never really, like, things just weren't clicking into place with that. So I one day was driving, and someone was flying around the highway, I mean, in and out of traffic. And I thought to myself, wow, that person is really out to hurt themselves or hurt others. I could just feel this dark energy around them. I could feel just such conflict. And as I'm getting away from them, and I backed off, and off they went, I took an exit, sitting at a stoplight and waiting for that light to change. And moments later, that same person in a truck hit the car behind me, and I ended up being the middle of a 5-car pileup and getting seriously injured again, with a traumatic brain injury, which made my ability to do my old job, like they said, my emails looked like word salad. I couldn't write, I couldn't form thoughts. All I could do was take pictures. I could just barely get through a day, a few hours a day, with being able to have cognitive abilities. And I was like, oh, that's what happened. Like, I went off path. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And so my abilities got limited down to just basically what I had committed to with the creation and the storytelling and the talking. And that's when I started going around and meeting people who had had near-death experiences and talking about those experiences, talking about addiction, talking about domestic abuse, sharing stories in communities, getting better therapy, all of that other stuff, because I came back full of energy. I can do it all, and I'm going to go live this big life. And all I have to do is do this one thing they asked me to do to get the life that I want, like committing to, renegotiating the contract, as some people say, like your life contract. And I didn't. I went down the old path, the safe path, the corporate path, the, not very healthy path. And then I was forced back onto my soul path, where I could do what I came here to do. And again, this sounds like on that yin yang thing, this sounds bad, but it was also really great because it got me into community with the people that were also writers and storytellers and nature lovers and other cancer survivors and other domestic abuse, people who needed the support. And so it changed like my worldview of where I'd been in the success paradigm into the community connection love paradigm. And so I feel like very lucky that I got pulled through that thread of experiences to pop me out of the things that really weren't good for my soul, my heart, my energy, my family. And that time, while I couldn't work, did allow me more time with my children, who were at this point in high school and really needed different types of attention and care than they would have gotten if I had been working the big corporate job and busy and traveling all the time. So it was, what do they call these, blessings and disguises, but the trust of all of this was really phenomenal. And what also happened through this entire time is that I'd been very intuitive as a child, and that first near-death experience when I was a toddler, and I said I popped home to meet the grandparents and hang out with them. I came back from that near-death experience, and I was telling the adults things that children should not know, right? Like it's like, oh, how does she know that? And I got in a lot of trouble for it, right? I got in trouble for speaking truth. I got in trouble for seeing through, but I had the guides, I had ghosts, I had ancestors, angels, whatever you'd like to call them, giving me information. And I would just say things to people as a kid. And I realized, like, our society doesn't like that. Our society doesn't, people don't want to be poked with their own truth or their own information, and that wasn't a good thing. But I had those abilities. And when I came back from my near-death experience, they were even more amplified. And I was open all the time, getting connections with people from their own energy, from their relatives who had passed, sometimes pets, things like that, whatever it was. And it went to my first IANDS conference in Salt Lake. And it was like I didn't have my energy guarded, and I was just wide open. And I would just say, here's somebody saying, oh, that's my daughter. Can you pass along this message? And, learning how to navigate these things about whether or not people believe we can communicate outside of our human terrestrial dense experience, that we are connected on other energy levels, whether or not people were open to hearing those things. And I was able to turn some of those skills into being able to help with business decisions, with being able to help with community types of activities, being able to really read when I was safe or not safe. And so that's something that I think all of us have the ability to do, is to tap into our own intuition and knowing and follow that, even if it feels super uncomfortable, because the more we do it, the better we get at reading our intuition and knowing where we're going, and how things can be possible instead of limiting ourselves to what we think is possible based on the past experiences we've had, to opening ourselves up to the possibilities of this infinite open experience of creating the world that we want to live in, creating the world that our own selves live in within the larger world. So the challenge now, 13 years later, and every day, for most of these years, is to not fall back into the paradigm of, here's what success looks like on earth, here's what success looks like in the community that I live in, here's how I'm supposed to behave, or the work that we're supposed to do, or how we're supposed to spend our time, but to remember that full love, infinite knowledge, infinite timelines, infinite possibilities of experience, and tap into that and allow myself to believe the magic that is beyond what my brain limits me to believe, and walk out into the world and see those hearts in nature, or to find the penny that's dropped right when I need a reminder of something, to love people for a moment, um, where they are, to love in a world that is constantly under fire and pain, um, to allow that, to just allow that and say, this is, we are love, we are infinite beings, and we are here on this beautiful planet. And I want to go out and hug the trees, and I'm going to, notice the miracles of the birds and the details of everything in life. And to make that happen, just to see the details of things in this world, and to not get caught up in the anger and the stress, and to be love in small moments. I think the biggest thing I learned from this near death experience was, like, we don't have to save the world, we just have to be ourselves, we just have to be. And being ourselves authentically is the hardest thing that most people will do in their lifetimes. And I'm always in awe of the people who are constantly out there being their full, authentic, open selves, without apology, without excuses, just fully into their own experience. And if we can just be who we are in any given moment authentically, to be the love that we were created to be the person that does the simple thing we're here to do, whatever that is, then that's bliss. That is heaven on earth. That is like the full expression of love and humanity of our souls. And so every day it's a reminder to myself to just sit in meditation, to go for a walk, to notice these things and remember that near death experience, and to come back to that space in my body that says, everything here is temporary. This body is going to fail me. It's already failed me a number of times. So do the most with it that I can. And I feel like that's a lot of platitudes, but it's really the need of that constant reminder, and the things that I can do. So, just going out to take photographs. I'm in Michigan right now, and we went out to an island, and there was a whole community of people out celebrating the end of Ramadan and Eid, and they were all dressed in their finest clothes. And we just talked to people, and to see the light and smiles and love and joy on their faces of being with their families and community, and everyone talking and celebrating together, it just filled me up. So I can't describe it, just filled me up so much with, like, this is what we're here for. Like, and I don't get that if I stay in my house and I'm watching my phone. I don't get that if I'm watching TV. I get that when I go out in the world. I get that when I look people in the eye, when we say hello to each other, when we sincerely find ways to connect. And this is why I think our near death experience groups here, and these communities that we're sharing our stories with are so important, because if you've had a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience, and you feel even a kernel of that love remaining from your experience that I do every day, I just know that all of us together can expand that and share that with the rest of the world, and keep us into our purpose here, and why we're here to just walk each other home and enjoy each other in this playground that we have. So
Yeah.
that's not a very long talk, but I really wanted to spend more time on Q&A and hearing what questions you all have or what you'd like to know more about, because I'm happy to get into any number of details about the things that I mentioned. And yeah, so
Wonderful, thank you. And I would invite everybody, both of those of you who are here as well as those of you who are joining us online, to please bring your questions forward to Tammi. That's been fascinating. Thank you so much, Tammi. I have a lot of questions myself while we're waiting for others to come in.
okay.
Comment really on the very final thing that you said about how it's, your near-death experiences have really, I mean, I'm summarizing this, just, the importance of community, the importance of connection. And of course, we're living in a world where we're sort of going in the opposite direction with all the AI, the younger generation constantly being on their phones. They'd rather text each other than step next door in a dorm situation and knock on the door and actually have a conversation face to face with someone. So it's really sad that we're just moving away from what we actually need, not recognizing that. So that was just,
Yeah.
by the way, tons and tons of, thumbs up and
thank you.
lots of hearts as you've been speaking. I do have some questions for you. I'm fascinated by many things that you've said. I want to start with the idea of the exit points. And I've heard several experiences talk about these. So you've had certainly more than one near-death experience. I don't know if it's 3 or 4, or if it's just 2. But you seem to talk in terms of when you were little, a toddler having surgery, you popped out of your body, you visited your grandparents. You recognized at that point, tell me if I'm wrong, that was an exit point. You wanted to come back in. So tell us in general about exit points. How many might people have in their lives, and what's the significance of them?
Yeah, I think we all have more than we think we do, because there are these nanoseconds of change and opportunity. If you've ever about to step onto a roadway and a car comes by and somebody pulls you back, that was a potential exit point. But something pulled you back in. And for me, I think the near-death experience was surprising to learn that that's what all of those were. Like, my understanding was that I had come as a toddler to do something very specific for my parents. They were not on path. I was not going to be able to help them in the way that I was supposed to. And that for my soul contract, it was like, I came, that pivot point for the parents didn't work and was going down a different path by their choice. So I could be done and I could go back home. And I thought, I'll stick around for the new game, right? Like, whatever path that they had gone down, I said I'll stick around and I'll change my trajectory to go on with them, and to just roll with that, right? And I think that we have more control over our choices to stay here in human form and stay home than we know now in our human form, because our souls have the multitudes of experiences that they can be going through, or what they want to have as a life experience here. And so it's hard when I think about people who are living really challenging, difficult lives as humans right now. Like, that they're like, I think it's dismissive to say that they've chosen this life. What I'd like to say is that we could choose differently. And we can take ourselves out of the patterns that we're in. But it has given me a lot of empathy for people who have had suicidal issues. It has given me a lot of empathy for people who are living in bodies that they feel are not their own, that there's mismatches and things like that, to allow for people to come in and say, this works for me or this doesn't, and make choices. And that if in a dream or a meditation or during a surgery, or as we know, sometimes car accidents and things like that, people pop out and they go home, that they have completed enough of what they came to do to not have to come back. But they have the choice to come back. That there isn't, to me, there was not a deity or an entity saying what I could or couldn't do. It was a community of love that said, you can go have all these experiences that you want, and they're not going to be easy, and you're always going to be okay. Like, no matter what happens in the end, you're always going to be okay. It will be totally perfect and full of love and community when you get home. So that's part of what carried me through those other exit points.
So, okay, so you hit on something that's fascinating too. When you were a toddler, this idea of the soul contract, which suggests reincarnation, that you were aware at that time that you signed up with your parents to help them learn something. And at that very, very early age, you realized that you weren't going to make the difference, that they were not interested in changing whatever it was that you felt you had meant for.
Right.
Without getting too personal, do you have any sense of what that was? It's just intriguing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're addicts. They were alcoholics, and they had choices with young children to take care of themselves, to heal, to take care of the children, and they chose their lifestyle, and what they felt like was the right, journey for them to do that. And my mom ended up dying of alcohol-related organ failure in her early 60s. My dad went into recovery in his 60s, and he's healthy and alive. But it was a long, long journey, and and that was the kind of things that, like, I look at that led me into marrying an addict, an alcoholic, and someone who is abusive, because my training had been through that. And how do I make the changes in my life, to manifest my day-to-day life choices into the things that were good for me, right? And this awareness of going through that with my parents into later years, and undoing that to be where I am today is like, it's amazing. Like, it's like a puzzle, right? Like, I got to live this puzzle. Here are the pieces coming together. I don't like the way this puzzle looks. I'm going to redraw this puzzle and make something different. But the transformations and the changes to go through that, it's again, it's like this long view. Like, nothing is permanent. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Everything's temporary. Get through something, make changes as we go along. And I want to draw this spiral, right? Like, as I saw it in my near-death experience, we're not living a linear line. If you want to see the bird's eye view, right? Like, if you imagine this line and people are walking along it, if you're here, you can't see what's going on down here. But if you're the bird up above, you see all time all at once. While this person's experiencing time over here, these people are experiencing time over here. They're moving this way. This view up here, you can see all of it, right? So what I experienced in my near-death home visit was, we're on a spiral, and there are touch points, and sometimes you heal that touch point as you go around, and sometimes you go into another spiral on that touch point, but that we're continuously circling, revisiting, relearning, and giving ourselves opportunities to change in these human bodies that I think also entertain or help our souls. I'm not going to get too religious into that. It's however people want to believe. Whatever you believe is right. Like, that's the answer on that. Whatever you believe is right. So I was fascinated by this idea that we can do these different things along our lifetimes.
It also sounds as though an exit point is a point at which an assignment might be finished, and one has the choice to check completely or
Yeah.
come back and maybe tweak things, change things a little bit. Is that you? Okay.
Yes, I think that's perfectly well said. And it's a choice too. Like, how much energy do you have? Is this really what you want to spend your time on? And as I said, I was refueled by feeling like I was in that permanent, pervasive love energy, that I was just fueled by it in ways that gave me strength that I continue to try to tap into today.
Can you tell us a little bit about the timelines of sort of infinite possibility? Because you seem to get some insight there. You know,
Um,
various timelines.
well, here's the thing. I wish I was smart enough to do this. There are a lot of people, especially in the NDE community, who study the physics of these things. Time is not just time is a man-made construct, and it's also material science. It's time is here in our gravitational system. Time does not exist out, like farther out into the space of the universe in the way that it does here. And so, looking at timelines, um, everything is. This is my experience. That when I was home, everything is all at once, and so an example of that is when I was traveling across the country, um, trying to figure out where I should go from day to day, where we would sleep, who we would visit, things like that. I had an intuitive voice in my head that said, come here, come here. It was giving me a very specific place to go. And I thought, oh, I have an angel. Like, this person's, like guiding me here. And then I got to where I was going and I thought, that was like me coming back in time, telling me to get to the place where I was waiting for me to get. Um, it's very sci-fi kind of thing, like that we can time travel, but our energy exists in ways that is not bound by the time that we are here in this human experience. And so I think that the learning is, what we imagine as humans as a timeline when we're home in the soul space, soul home. The timeline is actually like those bubbles that I showed in the beginning. I'm going to go experience that bubble. I'm going to go experience that bubble. I'm going to go do these different things. And we're just hopping around in it. And it's always expanding, contracting, moving. But we have access to all of it all the time. And I think we have access to a lot of that now too. But we're here to have the human experience. I'm going to say, I meant to talk about this a little bit in the beginning, was a lot of times I meet people that we have near-death experiences, or we're tapped into our intuition and we want to pop out of our bodies and go into that bliss state a lot. And it's a disservice to the time we're here, because we can be really terrestrial, we can be really embodied, we can be very physical and sensory, in touch with things in this body that we can't be when we are home. And so my goal is to be as much embodied as I can while I'm here, and enjoy this playground, enjoy going on roller coasters, enjoy riding my bike, enjoy hugging the trees, petting my dog, hugging my kids and my loved ones, right? Like, getting all of that sensory experience, listening to music. I was at the symphony last night and you just feel music going through my entire body. Like, do we know what a miracle this is? Like, what an amazing experience this is, that I did. I could have infinite knowledge at Soul's Home. I can feel infinite love, but the sensory experience, this human experience, is really, really magical.
Yeah, literally a unique experience to be human on this plane. Sure, because it brings so much more than you would otherwise have on the other side. Yeah. Intuition, you talk about intuition quite a bit. Is it your soul? Is it your higher self speaking to you, or do you think it comes from your guides?
I think it's energy directly from, like, if I'm doing an intuitive reading for someone, a lot of times it's their energy, what's trying to be revealed, what they're trying to speak or say or communicate that maybe they've repressed or they're a little afraid of letting out. And sometimes it's a matter of just tapping into that energy and feeling that come out. Sometimes it is somebody's guide, sometimes it's their ancestors. It's just, but to me, it's a communication of reading energy. I mean, the same way we have our phones sending energy waves to communicate things, like we are all energy beings, right? So we put on our radar or open up our lines and then let that come through what needs to come through. I could do hours on safety around intuitive communications and protecting your own energy and things like that. So I'm not saying everybody should just go like turn on their radar and open up, go get some training, go get some safety around that. Yeah.
You talk about the council and
Mm-hmm.
your guides. Have you met your guides? How many do you have?
I have two main ones, and I know their names and I know the feelings of them, and so when I said I popped back home and into this central headquarters, it was with the souls, the energy, the consciousness of beings that I had been with since my beginning of existence, and everyone was doing their own things, and I think people were have been surprised that like I didn't, meet up with family or I didn't meet, some sort of gods or goddesses and things like that. I was like, oh no, but we all are. Like we all are that. And they're like, no, no, no. But there's people who are designated as gods or goddesses or deities. And I was like, no, when you're home, everyone's equally love and that type of thing. But my family, like my physical family here, I'm very well connected with them. It's just that they aren't part of my core team of the beginning of my timeline.
Your your family here, your
Mhm.
physical family in the here and now,
Yeah.
they're not necessarily part of your larger soul group. Is that
Oh,
what?
they are. They
Oh,
just weren't part of the core team that I met with. Like I said, I did have an NDE where I met with grandparents and things like that. And I'm in constant contact with my mom. I mean, she saved my life because when she died in 2011, she came to me in dreams and showed me what I couldn't see about my ex-husband. Like it was like she took me to a room where I was on this side, but we were on this side of the room, and I could see clearly through the glass what was going on that I couldn't see in my real life. And there were days where dreams or messages from her are things that got me out into places that kept me safe. And she has been a solid and very active guide since her death in very explicit, tangible ways. So I am still connected to her. She just didn't happen to be there when I did my soul home visit.
so we
Yeah.
have a hand up for Karen, and
Yeah.
she'll be
Hi,
unmuted
Karen.
in just a moment. So while we're doing that, your guides' names.
Mhm.
That they gave you their names from the other side, or you knew their names from this side, or was it the near-death experience that allowed you to know? Because that's very
Um,
explicit.
through meditations is how I was able to have conversations with them, because I used to just um, hear them or feel them and things. And then one day I said, I'd like to know more. Can we do this? Can I get names? Can I get some understanding? I had an experience where when I was going through the cancer treatments, a women's group who was doing some somatic work to help me release a lot of the trauma from my body from the domestic violence. Um, they didn't know anything about my cancer. They said, we feel like there's someone here in a knight's armor who is this type of personality that's standing, at your feet. But the person who's trying to hurt you, they've shot a harpoon into this part of your body, and they named exactly where my cancer tumor was, where that harpoon was. These women who didn't know, but they described my guide perfectly, and I could feel that person there while I was going through this somatic, release, and so I really feel like I was like, here are these, women who are strangers, all but one was a stranger, and they could feel and connect with what I knew to be my own guide and my own support system, and also the trauma that I'd been through. Like I hadn't described it to them, so the interconnectedness of all of our energy, empathy, love, desire to heal, desire to be together in these types of communities, I think it really plays out when people are present and tuned in.
Thank you. Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, hi there. I just discovered this group like a week or two ago. I'd been sort of looking around for a local, yeah, I live in Silver Spring, Maryland. So I was looking around for like some local people. And anyway, um, just today, the thing that sort of really stood out for me, Tammy, what you were talking about was the value of being where we are now. And you talked quite a bit about it earlier, and then you came back to it later. But um, I'd love to know whatever insights you have about, because so much of the time we live in our heads, and we want to, even with spiritual stuff, we just go into these realms that are, thought based, but they're not so much real, where we are now.
Yeah.
So I think I'm kind of, in a place too where I've learned so much about spirituality and, just that whole, I mean, in some ways it's just an intellectual, um, concept, but when you're living here in the moment and you got to deal with every minute that you're living, I think that's what I would love to hear more information.
I thank you so much, Karen. That is so thoughtful of you. And I appreciate you and everyone being here today to listen and share in this conversation. For me, love is action, not a thought, it's not just a thought or a feeling, it's action. And my experience, the healing and the spiritual awareness and the body healing all happen through activity and motion and movement, using our bodies for what they're for. And for anybody who runs, I was doing 50-mile hikes. I was training for 100-mile bike rides. I was doing extreme athletic type of things to be in that motion, to get out of the narrative in my head, to be fully embodied, and then slowing things down to notice what was around me. And I've switched out of the extreme sports and I dance now. But there's things that we love, like we can find. Some people get into that flow through doing art. Some people get into that flow by fixing cars. Whatever it is that makes you feel like your intelligence, your creativity, your interests, come together, that those activities open us up to that flow of full embodiment, which allow, I think, then the spiritual to come through. And usually we have some kind of connection with other people when we do these activities, or that we're out, making something or being part of something in the world. And so for me, it's always motion, action, and that doesn't mean don't rest. I'm going to say that because rest is really important, but resting in a way that, when I was going through the cancer treatments and I just needed to be, the title of my book is Thank You for Being, not thank you for being something or doing something, but just thank you for being. I was so sick from the poison going through my body. I would put on a bathing suit or as little clothing as I could, and I would just go lay in the grass and just touch the grass and go walk to the creek and put my hands in the water. I'd be curious how many of everyone here today thinks that you've touched nature today. We've probably seen it, but have you actually have you touched it with your fingers, with your hands, your feet, your skin, anywhere? And there are a lot of indigenous traditions that talk about this need to connect with the earth. We can do it through food, ingesting our food, water, but it works even more. I think for me, it works even more if I am actually touching nature, just sitting on, touching a rock, makes all the difference in the world. And the energy of that rock, right? That's going to ground us, that's warm, it's going to hold us, finding that for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Can I ask you a little bit about the council?
Mm-hmm.
Describe them. What was that like? Were they light beings? How many were they? What were they telling you?
My council experience was, try to put this into a 3D description, right? Because everything was just love energy. The light was like colors we've never experienced in this human world. So everything was light and love energy, just constantly moving where I was. But the presence of the beings had their own unique, like, energy signal. They were genderless. They were just their own personalities, but also part of a cohesive connectedness. And my experience with them at this time was almost like we were in a control center, a hub of being aware of everything that was going on everywhere. And they were communicating on multiple levels with things that were happening through all time and space, and just enjoying themselves. And what they were doing for me when I was there was welcoming me back, as if I had just popped out, as I said, as if I just popped out for a walk or something, and then I came back. To them, I hadn't been gone for a long time, even though in my Earth world I've been gone for 43 years. But it was almost like a blip in time, and that they just gave me the space to reintegrate into the spiritual home. And then answer some questions when I had questions. Like I had some very concerning questions about, like, when people are here as humans doing very dangerous, bad, horrible things to other people, what happens to them? And what they showed me was everyone comes home, and everyone comes home to love. And the difference between what I was experiencing, being fully welcomed back into the center of that love and fully infused with it, because I was connected to that, was that the people who had done some dangerous, harmful, horrible things as humans, they were not connected to that love in their human bodies in ways that I'm still trying to be conscious of and stay connected. And that when they got to come home, they didn't just get to come home and like nothing had ever happened. They came to a space where they were cared for, and that they were reviewing their lives and their impact, as if they were experiencing what they did through the feelings of other people, and then facing that and finding ways through their little council of people that were there for them to reconnect to the love that they had disconnected from in their time on Earth.
Right. So life review.
Yeah.
Their own individual life review as a result of, yes, so they could experience how they'd made other people feel.
Yeah.
The council of light beings different from your soul family, from your own sort of soul group, as it were, that you...
They're my main soul group. They're like I said, they're the people, they're the consciousness that I've been with since the beginning of my existence.
So they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Sometimes we hear about soul families, and then we hear about the Council of Elders, and it's hard to know, are they separate? Or so for you, your soul family are your Council of Elders, as it were.
Well, no, I want to be sure that there's not a Council of Elders with some sort of power or better knowledge or anything like that. My experience was everyone was absolutely in a place of equality and openness and interconnected love. There was no hierarchy. Like, it's like, and this is what I've said, like, when I've gone and done talks to other people, I've had people get very angry with me because they're like, but there is a hierarchy. And I'm like, well, my experience was that there's not. And there isn't some wisdom of others that have come before or have done more or anything like that. It is just very equal in our own brilliance and experience and love, and that doesn't make one smarter or more prominent or anything. It was really very egalitarian, because we are all interconnected. So everything we experience, our community experiences too. And I think that, that comes down to the interconnectedness of everything we're experiencing here on the earth, right? Like, we poison our water, we're poisoning everything. We're the way we treat animals is the way we treat our earth. All of this stuff matters, right? So that, like, I don't know why that's such an unpopular or weird thing to say, like, that people like, you're so, hippie woman. But I'm like, I don't think that at all, because we are interconnected. And so the Soul Council, it just happened to be the community of support, and connectedness that's just a little bit more primary than everyone else. But think about how many times you've been out in the world, and maybe you're in the grocery store and having a bad day, and a little baby smiles at you, and you're like, oh, I feel so much better now. That baby just smiled at me. That baby could be part of the community, right? Of your soul people. And that baby just was there for that moment to remind you of your soul love and innocence and larger being than that moment of frustration in a grocery store. Like, I think there are these types of little miracles that we run into every part of our everyday lives, of people just swooping in for just a moment, and what they contribute in that moment is as valuable as somebody who's been with you for 50 years. It's all equal in my experience. It's all the same amount of love and community.
We have another question here. Can you talk more about the beings on the other side and what you have learned about them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll go kind of weird here for everybody, but I mean, what I saw was multiple types of planets, multiple types of existences, multiple shapes of different beings, ways of existing in the universe that are beyond the human experience, and how all of us are part of that. And it's just like cosplay, like trying on a thing. I'm going to go, live on this planet, and this is the way things are going to be for a while. And I'm going to go do this. And it's just kind of all I don't want to say a game, but, go watch some of these movies where expanding our minds beyond that. I thought it was great fun to do that. I think there's a lot of film and pop culture things that want to bring in aliens as either wiser or dangerous and things like that. And if you're open to this, like, to let that kind of labeling go and imagine worlds that are just not better or worse, but just different ways of expressing what we need. Maybe a planet that's all based on music and sound and communication through sound. One of the books I would read, if you guys are interested in this, is The Golden Compass, and that whole His Dark Materials series, because it does talk about these layers of existence with all different types of imaginative communities beyond the how we as humans experience it now, even just different types of humans and things. It's just be imaginative. I think that's one of the things that I try to explain too, is that when I came back, I was only allowed to come back with maybe this much knowledge of what I experienced. And through meditation, sometimes I can tap into some other things. But there's no way you can't take that infinite knowledge and stuff it all back into our limited bodies and brains.
Did you have any other explicit questions for your council? You mentioned about when people behave badly, as it were.
Yeah.
To them.
I think for me, it wasn't so many questions as it was more of just like the realization that everything I left behind was going to be okay. Like, it was like, that's not the end of us. Dying in this earth life is not the end of us. And so knowing that, I may have left my kids behind with family that wasn't what I would want for them, or the finances that I would have wanted for them, or things like that, that they'd be okay, because they weren't going to be tortured. They were just going to go through the human experience, and they would be okay at the end. And it was okay if I left a mess. I don't want to do that because the world is a little difficult when you do those things. It did teach me that, but for me, it was more of knowing the questions weren't as much that I need to know something. It was allowing me to feel perfectly at peace with where I was, and really great about it. Yeah.
It sounds as though you got some insights into many different kinds of worlds and many different kinds of experiences beyond
Yeah.
the Earth plane. How does the Earth School compare to some of these? Did you get any insights? Because we do hear about experiences say that Earth School is one of the toughest.
Yeah, I didn't talk about that at all, because my experience of like what Earth School is was, again, this is a sensory playground and an opportunity for us to have the most incredible, beautiful experience. And why are some people screwing that up for us and we're letting them? I don't know, but this is they're on their own path. And how do we stick on ours? But for me, it was realizing like the magic and the beauty of the Earth experience. And again, like going back to that yin yang thing, like you think something is bad because in that moment it feels bad or it feels uncomfortable. But the other side of it is it took me to the things that I needed. It took me to the people and the places that were enriching and enhancing and lovely. And if I hadn't gone through that pain point, I would have never gotten to experience that bliss and that love that I got. And I mean, I stood on top of a 14,000-foot mountain 2 years after I finished cancer treatments, jumping for joy that I could climb a mountain, right? Like, I didn't think my body would ever be able to do anything like that. And I wouldn't have done that if I stayed at my DC job and my DC commute and my, suburban lifestyle. That just made my life all about taking my kids around. I went through this horrible pain point of losing my family, losing my job, moving across the country. But I took my kids to a place where they grew into themselves to be different people, and I got to grow in to experiences that have made me beyond words happy and filled with joy, and allowed me to develop my photography and my writing and poetry and creativity in ways that I couldn't have if I had stuck.
That's a nice segue, because I do want to ask you about the traumatic brain injury that you had as well. But just to back up a little bit, I love what you're saying in terms of, ultimately trusting and surrendering and allowing your intuition to sort of be your guide, because while you are facing huge changes, very frightening changes, but allowing that change to take place and then sort of going with the flow, as it were, just opened up all these miraculous new possibilities, connections, new life for you, for your children. So the bottom line is, trust, surrender, and go with it. But let me ask you, because the way you put it is a little bit distressing, the idea, and tell me if I'm wrong, you went off your path. And this, this traffic being hit from the and being in this pile-up and suffering traumatic brain injury, which can scrambled your brain, you made it sound as though it was a wake-up call. You had agreed in one of your near-death experiences, maybe the last, that you would come back and tell the story and whatever.
And be a storyteller, creative.
Right.
Yes.
You weren't doing that. It sounds as though you were frightened, nor naturally. You needed to sort of make a living in a concrete way to be able to keep yourself, your children, etc. You weren't really doing that. It sounded as though this was a wake-up call to kind of get you back on path.
I can say that in retrospect, Angie. Right? Like, while it was happening, it was the worst thing ever. It was the worst thing ever. I had just bought a house. I just committed to huge amounts of money and staying in a place, and I had committed to this new job, which was like a 3-year plan to do some things in technology innovation. which sounded really good and really important, and that we were going to do things to help the world be a better place and all that. And so I really believed that what I was doing was right. It's only in retrospect that I can look back and go, oh, that was a catalyst. Like that was a big catalyst for pushing me back on path. And I don't want to think of it as punitive, that, you know, I think, but I mean, what makes us change? What makes any of us change? We don't change when we're comfortable. We don't change when we're comfortable. we change when something
ahead to get the program.
You know, we got the hourglass and then it goes down, and we change when we're being squeezed through that part of the hourglass so that the best parts come out. And I think that's just who we are as humans. Like some of us aren't going to learn our lessons unless we're squeezed to the corner. But if anyone here has changed while they're comfortable, I'm so impressed. I love that. But I don't think it's punitive. I think it's just it's just part of it.
I think if we were, speaking for myself, if I were more open to trusting my intuition, I probably wouldn't be having to be hit by the head with the cosmic 2x4. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, here it is. Here's a sign. Here's a whisper. Okay, you're ignoring that. We're going to up the volume. You're going to continue to ignore that. Okay, we're going to have to, raise the bar here or raise the intensity until you actually get it. And then something bigger happens, in which case you then have to really pay attention.
Yes.
So maybe it doesn't have to be so punitive, but it's a function of the fact that we're closed down and we're not really listening.
So this is what I was saying around looking for fruits in nature, right? I'm opening myself up. Where are the signs that I'm on the right path? And then I'm like, oh, I see them. And then now I see them everywhere. And then I find out, oh, some lady in town carves out rocks and she places them around. And I'm like, oh, well, good for her because she's answering my path, right? So opening up to our intuition and really following it. And it's in the smallest moments too. It's not loud. The intuition's not loud. It's not going to lecture you. It's just the little voice that says, turn left when you think you should turn right. It says, stay in bed. You don't know why, right? You don't know why you feel like you need to stay in bed, but maybe just take that extra sleep, whatever. You may have just missed a thing that you didn't want to get caught up in, and now your energy is focused on something else. I mean, I think that's thing. Sometimes people like intuition has to be this big, thing that you're going to notice. And it's like, no, it's every little bit of intuition we follow builds our muscle and builds our trust in ourselves. And because we don't I'm just tired of getting hit by the 2x4s. So I want to follow my intuition all the time and flow. Yeah. We joke around that, you can, what do they call it? Manifestation. People manifest things like, oh, front row parking space. I'm like, come on, front row parking space. Let's be a lottery ticket. Okay, well, I need to play the lottery if I want to win the lottery, right? So like you still have to take some action. Things aren't just going to happen. But the intuition means, again, love, movement, action, intuition. Just those are my daily things. And when I don't follow it, I feel the difference.
Yeah. We have a comment here from Karen. We don't change when we're comfortable. Do you know Suzanne Giesman? She asks every day, may my lessons be as painless as possible.
Yeah. I always do a meditation for the most benevolent outcome for all. I don't do a prayer and meditation, and that's all energy, right? That we can, what we do affects others. And so, I've done things in my life that were so right and good for me, and they hurt other people. And I know that, and that's okay. That's okay. Right. But I do want to have a benevolent outcome as much as possible without me naming what that I want the outcome to be, because what may come could be much more incredible than anything I can imagine. And that's what I feel like the life is that I have right now. The life I have now is beyond what I could have imagined 13 years ago. And I feel very lucky. So I want to keep being aligned and in tune with my soul's journey in that way.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Mary. When trying to address the physical pain from past traumas and treatments, do you ask your guides and spirits for help in alleviating it. I guess I'm asking about the possibility of healing via the connection you have with your angels and guides. Thank you for your wonderful talk.
Oh gosh, I love that question. Thank you all so much for being here, for your thoughtful questions. The physical pain, I think, is something that I really struggle with. I showed you all that picture of my body. That is my body with all the paint on it, and each of the paints was a different injury or trauma. And I mean, we're in physical bodies, and there is pain. There's also a choice, right? Like I'm in pain every day. My scar tissue hurts. I get overwhelmed with light and noise on my brain. But I make the choices to say I'm going to do the things I love to do, and I'm going to let the pain take a back seat. And I think the prayer or meditation or talking to your guides to ask them for relief and understanding what action you can take to relieve that pain. There's a trick that if you want to give someone a shot, you pinch them somewhere else and then you give them the shot. That can transference of your attention. What we pay attention to is what grows. So finding a balance with that. I mean, I just know our human bodies can be full of so much pain and suffering, and how to find your own way to where you feel some peace and some relief and some care around that. I hope that is a possibility for everyone, because it's the only way to get through. To get through is to have moments of relief.
Yeah. So in some cases, past life experience, near-death experiences, people do come back sort of miraculously cured without the pain. But in your case, you said your guides told you that they're not fixing anything. So why do you think that's the case? Did you have any say in that, do you think, from a life planning perspective? Why is it that you have not been miraculously cured from everything?
I think that there have been some miracles. I'll tell you, there was one big one, but I think that they really wanted me to be clear that I was coming back to continue healing from the traumas and the violence and the lessons and the addictions and all the things that I'd had to experience with other people, because those were my choices, right? Like I didn't have healthy boundaries. So I let addicts like run my life, right? Like, oh, I got to do everything for them. Well, you know what? Learning healthy boundaries was part of my path, so that now when people act that way, I just walk away. I've walked away from people I love dearly because their addictions run their lives. And I'm like, I love you and I love myself, and I'm walking away. And I do it. I wouldn't have done that if they had fixed things for me, right? Like I wouldn't have gone through the arc.
Right. I meant physically. I meant specifically.
But the physical stuff.
Yeah.
When I went, I still had cancer when I came back. They did scans. The tumor had not gone down. It was still very active, growing. The surgeon said right before I went into surgery to have that tumor removed, because I agreed to go through the surgery even though I stopped chemo. And she said they could see, they do a live scan right before you go in. And then when she met me afterwards, she said, the most amazing thing happened. She said, I was really upset that we saw the tumor hadn't gone down, even with all this chemo, that you were still like, contending with this thing. She goes, but I got in there and it was all scar tissue. So it dissipated from the moment that they did the scan going in to the time she did this surgery.
Okay.
And so all she found was scar tissue. And so to me, that was a miracle, that the actual cancer tumor was gone. She pulled the cancer tumor out and it was all scar tissue. And it took me a few years to realize, like, that was the little miracle I got, that even though everything else wasn't fixed, at least I didn't have an active cancer tumor. But, bodies, it started out with this, we seem to always be shocked that our bodies are limited and that they're going to expire, but they are, and they're going to be painful. But our bodies are also their own living organisms. Like they are, our bacteria, our organs, like everything can operate without our consciousness. So I try to give a lot of respect and love to my body and take good care of it, and feed it well and exercise it well and bring it joy and thank it every day for waking up and going for a walk and whatever I need to do. And just, I mean, I am symbiotic with the body. We all have bodies that are perfectly great to do whatever we need to do. Just do our best to take care of them.
Having been to the other side and back more than once, do you have any sense of what the origin of your cancer was? Is there an emotional component?
Yeah, I think it was absolutely from the stress of being in a domestic abuse situation and married to an addict who was living a secret second life. And I was told by society that it was my job to take care of him and fix things and make his life comfortable and earn the money and just do everything. And I was just really, really wiped out and exhausted, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I and my body just finally, when it got a chance to rest, like once he was out and in jail and away from me, and I was happy. I mean, that's the thing, is this happened when I was reunited with the love of my life, and I was able to be safe and at peace and feeling amazing. And then, and then I think it all caught up with me. And there are studies out there, and not enough of them, that show, especially women's bodies, we well, all bodies, we carry the stresses in our bodies, and that there are a lot of, I'd say every woman I talked to who was over 40 who had had cancer went through a bad divorce, went through an abusive relationship, some type of assault, something pretty traumatic, and that the cancers happened within 5 years of that trauma.
I've heard that too, and I've heard it in the case of women for breast cancer who've
Yeah.
gone through divorce.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know how.
Yeah, I had breast cancer. Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting, because that's obviously a part of the body that nurtures the baby. So
Yeah.
nurturing yourself. Do you read anything into the fact that it was breast cancer and not any other kind of cancer?
No, I think that was just where, it was a tumor developed. But it's, as they had shown me in this somatic healing
Right.
circle that I did, they basically, you've got a harpoon stuck in you. This person's not going to let go. They want to keep a hold on you. And and that was a manifestation of this, story of someone who wasn't going to let me live. Like they wanted to end me.
But that's fascinating, that energetically other people who didn't really know you were picking up on this.
Yeah.
But do you think that there was a connection with that and the actual tumor itself? Or was it sort of just the unhappiness of your former spouse wanting to sort of hold on to you, wanting to hurt you, but not necessarily a direct connection with that physical manifestation of disease inside you? Do you think there might be a connection or not?
I just think my body was responding to the stress. I don't know that he had that kind of power. Like, I think that was more.
And I just wonder on an energetic level whether
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought so, but maybe.
It's a really heartbreaking and sad thing, because this person was someone I loved so dearly and was the father of my children, and I really believed in the good of everyone, and the ability to overcome addictions and things like that. And I think that the transformation for me happened when I realized it was time to take care of myself, and it was okay for me to let go of taking care of other people. And that's where the transformation came from, that which allowed, I think, the peace in later in my near death experience, which was to just almost refuel me to come back. I think the near death experience was a gift, because I was able to get refueled in ways that I couldn't just here in this experience, and that's all okay. Like, that's why if people are in meditation or in some sort of somatic experience and they're popping out of their body, or they're having a stressful traumatic experience and they pop home, we need that. Like, I think we need those connections to home to keep us going. And that's why I'm saying 13 years later, it's this constant reminder to myself to tap into that and not just go back to the old ways of being. Like, remember home, remember what it was like, and carry those lessons with me into today's world. And
now, of course, you are telling the story,
yes,
aren't you, in ways that perhaps you weren't before. So you are actually complying with your agreement, as it were,
right.
the other side.
I am complying.
You're compliant. Very
And
good.
I'm doing it in a way that makes sense to me too, which is by taking photographs and doing art shows and meeting an NDE community. And also I've been, keynote speaker for a number of domestic abuse events and things like that, where, people go, well, if you just leave the guy. No, that's not how it works. He's still, it was 15 years. And as of last year, he went to jail again for stuff he did to us. He's not stopping. You can't just leave somebody and it's fixed. It's not poor people. It's not, non-white people. It's every person who's involved in these types of situations needs help getting out. And there's so much shame wrapped up in it. I mean, I tell you, like, I'll do these talks and people are like, well, it's okay if you talk about cancer because we can say the C word now that you couldn't say in the 70s and 80s, but we're not going to talk about domestic abuse and patriarchy and, misogyny and things like that. I'm like, this is a woman's experience. This is why so many women have cancers. This is why so many women are dying at young ages and have heart issues and things like that. Like, if somebody doesn't like me because I'm saying these things, okay, but this is my lived experience. And I know the more I talk about it, the more other women know that they have some resources and community and safety. And it's scary because I'm still in danger, right? Like, as long as that person's alive, I'm not safe. But I'm still speaking out, and, he'll watch this. I don't care.
So telling your story is not just your experience with the other side through the near-death experiences and the wisdom that you've gained. It's also your own personal lived experience as an abused wife, and how to raise people's awareness of what that is, what that feels like, help a lot of other women. So it's you've got a couple of purposes there, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, and it started out with being able to speak openly about growing up in a family with alcoholics, right? Like, we're never to speak of that. This is the truth of how humans are living and how what the choices we make affect other people in our families and our communities and things like that. And so the more authenticity and truth that is spoken, the more love and connection can come from the people who see themselves or see a way out. I don't think that I'm in the business of helping anyone. I'm simply trying to just stay alive and be authentic. And if there's some way that helps someone else in the community, I'm really happy for that. But I've never been able to save anyone. I've had dozens and dozens of people call me, and I've never been able to tell them what to do and they do it and they're saved. They do what they're going to do. And I refer them to professionals because I've learned the hard way that, I'm not in the business of saving people. People are in the business of saving themselves.
Right. So that's a perfect segue to this next question. How do you deal with people who have done horrible things to you? How do you deal with your spouse if he's continuously trying to, get to you and your kids and hurt you, if he's gone back to jail? I mean, how do you,
it's
from a perspective, from a spiritual perspective, deal with all of that?
It's a simple thing, an everyday thing that I started doing when I first filed for divorce, which was I would take my camera out and I would take one picture a day of something beautiful to remind me that we are in a beautiful place and that things would be okay. And so what I do now is I've got this much bandwidth and I give it this much attention or no attention. And I put my energy and my attention into the people that I love, the activities that I love, the things that bring me joy, learning something new. And if I'm still in a bad mental space around that, I go for a walk, I go for a bike ride. As I said, my way of doing that is to move it, but to know for myself, like I can't change someone else's behavior. I can't change anything about their actions or the way they see things, and to let that go. I think that I was raised to be codependent and fixing and making things okay for everybody. And what I learned from that is like just focusing on myself and the people I care about and the things I care about. That can take all of my energy, and let that take my energy and give that my attention. And I'm still very sad for people who are causing harm, and I wish them healing and I wish them well, which makes my daughters angry. They're like, stop this with this, new agey nonsense of wishing other people well who are really horrible people. And I'm like, but I don't wish them suffering, because I know what suffering feels like, and I know what pain feels like. And I do wish them healing, but just nowhere near me. Just nowhere near me. Just go away.
But at the same time, they're calls for love. So whoever he is, wherever he is, he's obviously in a tremendous amount of pain, and he's projecting that out onto you and onto the world. He's not a spiritual person, presumably, by any stretch. Yeah.
But the love that I feel goes towards first self-care, and then second for my family and friends and things like that. And I think to actively love someone who causes harm is really hard for the incongruency of how our brains work.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But we can be love in the world without having to engage someone who wants to cause or is causing harm. And having that boundary is love. The boundary is love. The boundary is the best manifestation of love that I could express.
And I think from a 3D perspective, you're handling it beautifully. I think from a cosmic perspective, you are doing this person a tremendous favor, if you will, because eventually when he has his life review, he's going to experience his own behaviors from your perspective, your children's perspective, and hopefully he would then reconcile with that and get to the point where it's right. And somehow that might inform his next journey, so right. He gets a little bit closer and more in touch with the love that he's completely lost touch with.
Yeah. In the same way that I have caused harm, and I reflected on that in my own near-death experience, and understanding that sometimes we do cause each other harm, but it's not malicious, and it's not permanent, and it's not something that has to be hung on to. But we are all imperfect beings, and we are all going to, at some point in our lives, many times, cause harm to others, whether intentional or not. But to not, to realize, like, I own up to my mistakes, I own up to my choices. And there were a number of pivot points in this lifetime that I could have made different decisions, and I wouldn't have been in the way of harm that I was in. But I made decisions that led me to be there, because I just didn't know. Now I know.
So here's a question that's sort of perfect from what you just said. Okay. Let's carry on. Did you find that your abusive husband is part of your soul family, and is he in your life to give you the opportunity to catapult you forward?
I think that this is probably one of the questions I wrestled with the most, because I could assign meaning, or I could not allow the meaning to be there, and that's a choice. That this person came into my life at a beautiful time in my life where I thought we were very much in love, and we created a family, and I loved that and I wanted that. Now, did we have an agreement that we would help each other through some soul work while we were here? Maybe. But maybe he was here just to do what he was here to do, and I am here to do what I was here to do, and we happen to coincide. I mean, I don't have an answer on that. I've had many people try to assign meaning to it. Like, I went for a psychic reading once, and they were like, well, he was supposed to do this, but he went off path. And I'm like, but did he? Maybe the gift was that he pushed me into that point of discomfort that I had to change everything in my life. But I don't know, because we're not there yet. We haven't finished the journey, and I'm not able to know the whys or the whats, but I trust, because of my near-death experience, that everything is perfect in timing and experience and outcome, because whatever the outcome is will be perfect for the journey that we're all on. And so I'm not going to place blame, and I'm not going to give credit, and I'm not going to assign a role to that. I may find out at the end of this life. I may never know. But it's definitely something that people have asked about a lot. And I think that puts me in the line of like, I need to forgive, or I need to understand, or I need to like appreciate that. And I just would never put anyone through the horrors that my daughters and I have gone through over the last 15 years, no matter what that lesson was. But, here we are, humaning.
Let me ask you, going back, you talked about when you were on the other side, you began to understand quantum physics,
Yes.
and you began to understand the geometric patterns behind the universe, and how math and science are actually part of how everything is put together. Could you speak a little bit to that, please?
Yeah, I really loved that part of it. It was probably the most geeked out experience, like fun experience I was having, because in college I had taken a bunch of quantum physics classes, and the professor was like, you really should stop doing this. You're getting bad grades. I'm like, but I can feel it like on the edge of my brain. Like I get it. And I know it's just there. And then I was like, this lifetime is not for that. It's not for that. And so when I got home into the, central headquarters there, and I was, letting all of the information flow in and being able to see, I mean, this is stuff that you can go look up right now on YouTube and from science journals and things like that. But the mapping of everything that we have on this planet is mathematically brilliant, and how we communicate through, even they're debunking quantum physics now as the end all be all of these layers of communications and time and things like that. And it's even more expansive than that. But just being able to understand that it's the patterns make sense at the most microscopic level to the macro level, and feeling like we are all an integral part of this. We're not separate from it, observing it. We are in it. We are created of it, and we are part of it. And so as we move through the world, everything we do that's interconnected impacts everything else. And that's what the math of that and the science of it taught me, was that the energy and the physical manifestation of the geometrics is just a perfect solution. And it's miraculous, right? Like how much of our DNA is close to other animals' DNA. We look like this and they look like that. And it's just patterns, and the pattern shifts. But we're all interconnected. And so for me, that was the great realization of it. And also that science, as we learn it here, is not absolute. It's also fluid and changing as we understand more and more and more. So I think that's going to be fun to learn, but I'm not putting myself in that place anymore of needing to understand the science as much. And there's if anybody wants to message me afterwards, I'll tell you about a group in Denver that does this SSE, the science of exploration, with a bunch of physicists and people who are now proving what those of us who have had NDEs have been telling for hundreds of years. Now scientists are like, oh, we're proving this, and those of us who had NDEs are like, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. Thanks for proving what we know in our
Absolutely.
full bodies.
We're almost at the top of the hour. I do want to give you
Okay.
about 5 minutes or so to do your closing. But before we get to that, I do want to ask you about the challenge that you mentioned. You said you have to sort of remind yourself about the challenge of not falling back to into the old paradigm, but actually
Yeah.
bring the full love and the infinite knowledge and the experiences you had on the other side.
Angie, thank you so much. And thank you all again for being here, for your time and your attention. This is exactly what I wanted to talk about in my closing, was that I am 13 years out from the near-death experience. I haven't had any others since then. I've had some spiritually transformative experiences through meditation, through some plant medicine, through hikes, things like that, that I feel fully connected to soul home. I feel fully connected to guides. I feel fully connected to the people here who are in my life and whom I love. And I just get caught up, like we all do, in here's my to-do list. I've got to go get groceries. I've got to get gas. Taxes need to be done. Things like that. File the health paperwork, and I can get overwhelmed with that in a day and forget why I'm here. And my purpose in saying this to you all out loud is to remind myself that I can choose joy and something beautiful to connect with every day in my life, and to make that a priority, to remember that kernel, like all that infusion of love that I had in my near-death experience that filled my entire being. It feels really small right now in this body. And how can I expand that? First, pay attention to it, expand it, and bring it out. And then I want to share that with others, through art, through dance, through speaking to people, through just conversations with strangers, whatever that looks like, to make sure that I tell the people in my life every day that I love them, and to say it, and not just feel it, but to say it, and find ways to make them feel it too, and to do work that's going to make this place a better world. I mean, I was in ethical AI for a while on my path back into the corporate stuff, and I went down there, and then I went, don't do this, right? Like, don't do this. Don't put my energy into things that aren't making this a better soul experience for myself and for others, and to keep that perspective of everything is interconnected. And so I'm going to go hug my trees. I'm going to go look for hearts in nature. I'm going to be very present in every moment with the people who are in my life, and not always be worried about the past or anxious about the future, to trust that intuition, to really develop and connect and trust with that intuitiveness of our own inner wisdom, because we are infinite. We are so brilliant. We have been here for all time. We will be here for all time. And what we're doing now, we can tap into that. And so for me, I just really want to embody that every day. Not doing it perfectly every day, but being in a safe, good place right now with people that I love is making a huge difference, and being able to live that life. So that's my hope for all of you, is just to feel this love that those of us who have had NDEs bring back, and to feel that for yourselves, and know you don't have to have a near-death experience to feel it. Just enjoy it while you're here.
And for those viewers who'd like to follow up with you, do you have a website? What's your email address, if you're happy to share that, in case people have questions?
Tammi, TAMMI.love is one of my websites, or tammyspring.com. They'll take you to the same place. I'm writing on Substack, and I've got a placeholder right now for my near-death experience column that I'm going to be sharing more of this story. as I get ready to complete the book that I'm writing. And so anybody can just contact me through those, and there's an email address right on my website to send me that.
And tammispring.com. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure,
Thank you.
to have you with us this afternoon. You're quite an inspiration, to say the least. Thank you so very much. Wish you all the very best. And
Thank you very much.
once again, everything, for sharing your wonderful wisdom.
I love all of you for being here. I am so grateful, and I look forward to meeting you in person some days.
Thank you, everybody, for all your comments throughout. I don't know if you can hear the applause,
I can.
but thank you so much, Tammi. God bless. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care. Thanks for joining us. Bye.